Yeah, looking forward to being back in Hope Coliseum tomorrow night. Appreciate again the administration's effort to try to get some extra students in there. 8:30 tip, as we know, middle of the week game can be difficult for some fans to get here. So really need our students to come out. And then if you are a season ticket holder and you know that for whatever reason you may not be able to get there tomorrow night, get that ticket in somebody's hands that we can get somebody in those seats. So yeah, excited for that. Got a very talented Utah team coming in that's probably playing, not probably, they're playing, some of their best basketball of the year, and obviously have two dynamic scorers and Brown and McHenry, and then Dawes, who we actually played against when he was younger at Rice. He's playing really well as well, probably playing as good as any forward in the league over the last 5 games. So like all nights in the Big 12 are going to be a big challenge.
I know falling behind by 14 is not ideal, but is there some comfort in knowing that your team plays a full 40 minutes and can finish games?
Yeah, I mean, it's we talk about it a lot. It's the one thing that we kind of write on the board before every game is stay together for 40 minutes, and it is a 40-minute game, and there's going to be ebbs and flows. Like you said, you would hope they wouldn't be maybe as dramatic as some of those have been, but I think our guys do a really good job of staying together in those moments, and certainly not any panic amongst the group. And there is some level of confidence knowing that we can, get the stops that we need to get back in games and make the plays when necessary.
Coach, there's an old saying in basketball that once you get to a certain point of the season that a team, it is what it is. I don't know if that saying reflects you guys or not. I mean, would you agree? I mean, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I don't agree with that necessarily, and I think some of it is because of especially in this time period, the amount of newness that you're going to be dealing with on a year in, year out basis. Maybe if you were, had the good fortune of having a veteran group that you'd had for 2 or 3 years, but when you're putting a brand new group together, and again you're experiencing a lot of experiences for the first time, even this late in the year. And so you're always having the ability to improve a little bit, whether that's, like we've talked about it prior, whether it's myself finding better ways to put these guys in positions to be successful, and then the individual players themselves continuing to improve. And that's the focus, and that's going to be our focus until the very buzzer goes off on the last game of the year. Like I don't ever think, my mind doesn't really go to like we are what we are and it is what it is, because I think you always have the ability to improve individually and collectively, and I can continue to get better being around these guys.
I would imagine there's, to some degree, a sense of excitement to that, and that every day isn't the same as the day before, and it's just not a matter of going through the process. Every game kind of maybe brings up something like what Jasper did the other night. When it's constantly something new, I imagine that kind of adds something in it for you, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly a freshness component, even though we've been at it for a long time, since June 1st, and again, all these guys are experiencing the Big 12 for the first time and everything, the challenges that come with that. And there's not like a lot of, mundaneness. I think our guys are still excited to be around each other, which is important this time of year. They enjoy coming to practices. They enjoy film sessions, and ultimately they enjoy trying to get better, and that's really still the same focus in our minds, is like, how can we get better through these processes and through these games?
Is it that Jasper continues to play like the way he did at UCF, especially down the stretch as you close out the season?
Yeah, he made big shots, and he's done that throughout his career, in certain moments, and it gives you another punch. And we've kind of talked about those opportunities being there for him, and he's got to step into those with confidence, which he did, and made some big shots for sure.
on Justin's question a little bit. We've talked a lot about Honor, ways to get him open, ways to get him going with Jasper, with Eagle Staff. Are you finding new ways to do that, or is this just more an encouragement of, hey, you all can attack the basket, you don't have to be just perimeter players?
Combination of both. Yeah, combination of both. You know, you're watching the film and you're seeing where they can be a little more decisive in their attacks and confident, and then also helping them understand that this is what we want for them to do as well. And again, how can you maybe manipulate some of the defense's principles against them to put those guys in those positions, and when then they're in those positions, you want them to be aggressive.
Is that just part of the discovery for Trayson, for him to understand, hey, I can score over people even though I'm not a post player. I can take a lot of the guys that are guarding me and shoot over them inside.
I think it's just, like you said, just the evolution of trying to improve and trying to get better and trying to find little ways that we can add. And, you know, maybe you add some things that you didn't know were there, and then maybe try to subtract some things that aren't working so well, you know, and just it's the constant, you know, growth mindset, I guess you would call it, instead of a fixed mindset. I think the fixed mindset is like, we are what we are and it is what it is, and I am the player I am. I think a growth mindset is going to be more open to learning and failing in some instances, and learning from that and growing and trying to find ways to get better.
What are some of the concerns with tomorrow's game? I know 8:30 tip, Utah. What are some of the issues that they present?
Yeah, I mean, their guards are extremely dynamic. I mean, you have two of the top 10 scorers in the Big 12, you know, Brown and McHenry. And, you know, Brown's aggressive with the ball in his hands, and he can get to spots. And McHenry has the capabilities to make difficult shots over you. And then, like I said, you know, Dawes wasn't shooting the ball great earlier in the year, but now he's starting to make threes from that kind of combo forward position. And Chore's a good player. They play with a lot of confidence offensively, and they're super aggressive. And they've just, like most teams, maybe their record hasn't reflected it up to this point, but they have gotten better. And, I mean, they were in a one-possession game with Kansas at Kansas. Obviously, we know the two games we had with Cincinnati and how difficult that was. They had a chance to win that game the other night, so they just continue to get better, you know, and that's where the challenge lies. You legitimately have two of the best shot makers, scorers in the league, and if you allow them to get going and get comfortable, you can be in for a long night.
Jansen obviously had a lot of NBA in his background before coming back to Utah. Do you see NBA ideals and what Utah does? Or
Yeah, it's you know, it's a copycat. You know, college mirrors the NBA in some ways, and some of their actions and some of their spacings. The spacing is different in college because of, you know, the paint and the key area. So, but yeah, no, they run good concepts. He gets those guys in space, and they're aggressive, and they know where their attacks are going to come, and they shoot the ball with confidence. And again, when they're making shots, they're a very difficult team to beat.
Kind of back to these last two road comebacks, the defense is tightened immensely at the end. Is that something you're making adjustments in the huddle, or is it more player mentality? And what's this resilience going to do down the stretch? How's it going to help the team?
Yeah, not a ton of adjustments per se. I mean, I think, for instance, on Saturday in the Central Florida one, you know, our offense was really hurting our defense to start the half. We had 2 or 3 turnovers that led to direct layups on the other end. And so you're really not even giving yourself a chance to defend. So some of that conversation was like, hey, let's take better care of the ball. And we only had 1 turnover the last 15 minutes of the second half, which we've talked about that. It's not football, so it all flows together. If you're taking care of the ball and you're getting good shots and you're being efficient on offense and you're able to set your defense, that's when we're at our best. And there were a couple other small fundamental things that, you know, we didn't execute right out of halftime. One of our double teams came from the wrong side, and they made a three, and that's what good teams can do. They make you pay. They make you pay, when you make mistakes. And Central Florida made us pay for those, and obviously Utah has the same ability to do that. If you're a little late on rotations, or you're not playing with the energy and effort required to make people miss, they're going to make.
Ross, if you just hypothetically here, if you had a postseason game tomorrow and you were playing, who do you play first? Mount St. Mary's. You played them tomorrow, and they just watched the tape. How different? Like better, I understand, but how different would it be?
Us, similar in a lot of ways. I think experience would be the big difference, right? And the comfort level of our team having been together and have these vast experience, whether it's really, really heartbreaking losses, important wins, road wins, just all those things that kind of bond a team together, I think would be the biggest difference, and then our ability to maybe just execute some things defensively. I think we're further along in our understanding. At that point in time, you're still really just trying to get your base fundamentals down, and then all of a sudden you throw in wrinkles to maybe some new stuff that other teams guard that you haven't guarded before. And so just your kind of catalog of experience and understanding and learning is so much higher.
If you were to sit down with the whiteboard and draw up your plays on offense or after timeouts, whatever, fairly similar? You're just better at it, but
and the timing of it, and I think you're more like just the ability to play the game, and like I say, you're always kind of adding wrinkles, even if it's just a way to get a basket in these games. These games are so close, so you're always going to be adding new things, but you have your core, your core identity of things that you like to run that doesn't change that much.
how much of that do you think explains all the, like you said, the experiences, the growth too, but just your success, your improvement, that you didn't reinvent the wheel, you didn't cross this out with something in new because a slow start or a bad half or a rough patch, like just kind of said, we're just going to continue working this and get better at it?
Yeah, I think, again, you got to give our guys a lot of credit for that and their belief in what we were asking them to do, and our staff's ability to communicate that in a manner that maybe despite not having the level of success you would have liked early on, that you still believe in what we're doing and you believe in each other. And through that belief, and to these guys' credit, our staff's credit, they did a great job assimilating a group of guys that love basketball. You guys have heard me before talk about this stuff. They love basketball genuinely, and they love being around other people. And usually if you have those two combinations of things, you can get better. And then it just becomes, how much better can you get?
I've been wanting to ask you this. You've had an opportunity to study, I guess, every team in the Big 12, either preparing for them or watching other teams on tape. What makes up the ideal team in your mind? And based on the style of play and the way the games are called, what is a makeup of an ideal team that you'd like to have?
I think in the Big 12 specifically, again, you better have a baseline physicality, and you better have an ability to defend night in, night out. And if you look at the top of the league, that's who's at the top of the league, those teams, the teams that are the best defensive teams in the country. Now, they also have very gifted offensive players, and they have talent. But aside from the talent, again, I think it's the physicality, the ability to defend and give yourself chances to win games night in, night out. And I think that's kind of what you see with, Houston's run here lately, and Iowa State certainly, and just, that base.
I ask it because when West Virginia got into this league, they played a certain way in the Big East, and then the style of play in the Big 12 forced them to alter that, and what came out of it was press Virginia. Have you thought about that, how you make up your team? Does it fit this league, or do you need to tweak it?
Yeah, no, I think we do fit this league, and I think our identity and the things that we believe in, are ultimately the things that win in this league. And then, I don't think you can be married to a to a style of play necessarily, because you are going to have so much turnover in this era, but I think you can kind of have your core pillars don't change, but how you go about those core pillars. You talked about like Press Virginia. Well, Coach Huggins' teams were always like tough and rugged and physical and rebounded the ball, and that was like the core pillars of it. Then they just kind of changed and went from maybe a tough physical man-to-man defense, but underlying that, going to the press was still their physicality, their rebounding ability, how tough they were. Like, those things don't change. Maybe just how you go about achieving those has to change a little bit.
Watching you all on out-of-bounds plays under your own basket, it looks like Phil is kind of in charge of that. How much freedom does he have? How much, has that come from things you have done? And is he kind of the coordinator of that part of the game?
When we score, I'm in charge of it, and when we miss, he's in charge of it. No, Phil, that's kind of Phil's baby, and he runs that all by himself. Obviously, he gets some input from like Johnny and Sean. That's kind of the core offensive guys, but Phil calls our baseline out of bounds plays. He's responsible for implementing them if we need to change, depending on how people guard them, and he does a great job with that stuff.
Feels like your success rate has been pretty good this year. Is that at a level that you're like, hey, if we can keep doing this, we're good?
Yeah, it's like anything else, man. Like, if you can find a way to steal a basket on a baseline out of bounds in the margin of victory in these Big 12 games, if any way that you can give yourself a little advantage in these games, you have to try. And Phil's done a great job with that. And Phil's great, like all these guys. I mean, he'll be a head coach, one day for sure.
You go through the season with the anticipation of being in a position at a certain point of the year, late in the year. Now that it's kind of here, what does that feel like? And then I'm assuming it adds pressure with each mounting game, doesn't it?
It can. It can. You certainly want to be playing meaningful basketball games in February and March. I think that's what every coach hopes for, every player hopes for, as a competitor you hope for. And we've discussed it with our group, and it's true. I mean, like, to feel pressure is really a privilege, and you need to understand that. I would say it all the time, even when I was like an assistant coach, like that anxiety that you feel in your stomach leading up to these games and that nervous energy, like that's a feeling that a lot of people will never get to feel in their lives, and it's really hard to explain to people what that feels like. So to be in meaningful moments and meaningful games, and to feel like the pressure that you're talking about, like, it really is a privilege, and you've gotta be appreciative to be in these situations and not kind of shrink and pull back from it, but keep leaning into them and be the aggressors. And you're not playing to lose something, you're playing to win, and it's the mindset of that going into these pressure situations, that if you kind of go into it like you're holding on to something or you don't want to lose, well, then you probably have the wrong mindset. So super thankful. And to play meaningful games in February, March, that's what you want to do.
That mindset can be a unique thing, right? In that there's roller coasters, peaks and valleys, and at some point, like maybe the trip to Houston, it doesn't look good, and then obviously the UCF game, the Kansas game. I mean, there's to be able to maintain that mindset. Is there a trick to that you've learned over the years?
Yeah, I mean, I think the trick, if there is a trick, and it's boring, it's like coach speak, and you really do have to try to stay even keel with your approach, because there can be, especially in the time period we live in now, like the roller coaster of emotions from a win to a loss and everything in between. You've got to try to do your best to not go on that roller coaster and try to stay even keel and understand that you're playing in the best basketball league in the country, and there's going to be bumps along the road, and typically the teams that can handle those adversities the best, whether it's playing poorly and getting beat or having a disappointing home loss or having a great win, you've got to be able to kind of process it at all and get to, we tell our guys, just what's the next right thing, so you beat Central Florida on Saturday. The next right thing is get treatment on Sunday. Let's have a good film session practice yesterday and a great prep, and that's what you do, and you don't try to get too far outside of that. I can only speak for my personal self and my personal life. I'm probably at my worst as a human and as a coach and as a father and a husband when I'm trying to think too far outside of the framework of what could happen. Because I'm sure everybody in here has created anxiety in their own life worrying about what could happen, and then it doesn't happen. And then you look back on it and you're like, why the heck was I stressed about that for the last 2 weeks? And it didn't even happen. And like none of us know what's going to happen. So you got to kind of control what you can control and put your effort into what's right in front of you. And whether that's a big win, you got to put that behind you. Or if it's a heartbreaking loss, you got to put that behind you. And so what's beautiful about this league is the opportunities will be there for you to take advantage of if you can take advantage of them.
One more, Coach Forte, you guys obviously got a trip coming up to Oklahoma State in a week or so. Has he talked about heading back to his old stomping grounds at all? Or?
We played there last year in the quarterfinal of the NIT, and it was actually really cool, man. He got an incredible standing ovation from the crowd that night, and I think that was the first time that he had actually been back to Stillwater. But we haven't, like I said, he's trying to figure out how to come up with a new baseline out of bounds play that maybe we can score a bucket against Utah tomorrow right now, but he hasn't talked about that yet.
You talked a lot about learning experiences early in the season, some of the disappointments. Did that shape this team to this point?
I think everything shaped them. I think all those moments shaped them. The good and the bad. The disappointing losses of the Clemson and Ohio State games where you felt like you had opportunities to win and didn't, and the playing your rival for the first time and beating them worse than any other West Virginia's ever beat them. So I think all those kind of moments have shaped this team, and that's what I love and appreciate about this team in particular is their ability to stay together, and they've never blamed each other. They've never blamed me. They've taken accountability for the things they needed to do better, and they've gotten better.
It's always important in rebounding, but how important is it in this game specifically? Utah out-rebounded Cincinnati 40-30. How important is it going to be?
Yeah, it's always huge. It's always a big part of it. And again, they're so good offensively that you're not going to want to give them multiple chances to have, second and third chances to score. And so much of the offensive rebounding that they can create is because they drive the ball with such force. Troy can really drive the ball. Dawes can drive the ball. Brown's one of the best paint touch guys in our league, and then they collapse your defense, and now you're in vulnerable rebounding positions. So, yeah, it's going to be huge.
Earlier, the privilege, the pressure, playing meaningful games this time of year. Did you go over with your team the importance of these games and what they mean for the Big 12 tournament as it relates to specifically the first round bye? No? No, we just honestly, I think it kind of goes back to what I said earlier. Like they're not. They live in a social media world. They don't need me to tell them, what's at stake. And I think it's my job to counter that messaging and try to get them focused singularly on let's beat Utah on Wednesday night. And if you can do that enough times, then the things that you hope for and want will be there in the end. And if you start making it too much about other than just how do we get back, how do we slow these guards down, it just gets confusing. because everybody else is going to want to talk about that. Our families, our friends, everybody wants to talk about everything other than kind of what's just right in front of you.
This is kind of unfair. Like, pick your favorite kid. But do you have a favorite individual or maybe even collective defensive performance this year?
Yeah, I'm certainly not going to openly talk about who my favorite kid is, but no, there's not necessarily.
Like a standout that maybe you guys talked about in there that you didn't see or read or hear otherwise, or one that's just, man, we're not going to be winning this game without this thing, this player, this match.
Yeah, it's a great question. You know, I'd probably have to like think a little bit on it, huh?
Homework assignment. I'll circle back.
Yeah, I mean that's a good one. I mean, I think you know, I thought from a game plan discipline standpoint, I thought the second half of the Kansas game we were able to really implement what we were trying to do. We went on that big run and we were fortunate to get some misses, but not necessarily like just kind of a seminal play or a seminal moment that I've thought like, you know, that was incredible. I don't think. I have to think about it.
And then this is not related, but the box. I thought Obioha played pretty well. Took one shot and didn't score.
Yeah.
And like played pretty valuable basketball there too. Can you just kind of contextualize what he's done that a couple of times? Maybe not over one, but he's had those quiet but
yeah. He had the highest plus minus of anybody on the floor in that Central Florida game. He was a plus 16 when he was out there, and he's really became very good, borderline elite in his ball screen defensive coverages. And, you know, he was able to play the final 12 minutes of that game, and just his ability to communicate the coverage, be level, play both, get a couple deflections. I mean, there were a couple high-level defensive possessions that he had his hands all over it. And I think that's why you saw the impact with his plus minus, despite scoring a basket, his impact on winning was very high. Not to mention he's an incredible screen setter on the offensive end of the floor that frees up some of those other guys for shots. But he's worked really hard, and I've mentioned this before. You know, your center is kind of the middle linebacker, free safety of your defense. Usually, he's in a position to see everything, and his ability to communicate quickly what's happening and process it and then execute it is what allows our defense to be as good as it's been. And we have been one of the best 2-point defenses in the country and one of the best 2-point defenses in the Big 12. And Harlan's a big part of that.
I think when you think about ball screen defense, people like me, I probably think about guards or like rangy forwards, but can you just kind of go into that a little bit? Like, how was the guy who's 7'2", 270 been so good on ball screens? I mean, there were no lobs in that second half as he got in there.
Yeah, just his feel and his timing of being level at the screen, staying in front of the guard, but having the ability to recover to the other forward, and then just the mental ability to process the information quickly, because your coverages may vary. He may be responsible for calling 4 or 5 different coverages in a possession, depending on where the ball screen's being set, who's involved in it, where is it. I mean, it could be an under, it could be a red, it could be an ice, it could be a blue, it could be and his ability to process those information quickly and then execute it. And simply because he is such a large human being, to constantly be in front of the ball, wherever the ball may be, and be between the ball and the basket.
Coach, thank you.
Thank y'all.